talk, girl talk. What's better than girl talk? Girl talk, girl talk. What's better than girl talk? Chat with the ladies about their day, the ups and downs along the way. She's a cook, she's a chauffeur, she's a worker bee. First in the door and last to leave. Girl talk, girl talk. What's better than girl talk? Girl talk, girl talk. What's better than girl talk?
Welcome to Girl Talk. I'm Regina Ayers, and many of you know that Carol Boyson and I have been co-hosting Girl Talk for over 4 years here on Rogue Valley TV. And I am going to start hosting solo now, as Carol is dedicating her time to the digital independent news site, the Ashland Chronicle. The Chronicle is more than news. It is a community in conversation about what matters in our lives here in the Rogue Valley. And we wish her well. And for those of you who are new to Girl Talk showcases women in the Rogue Valley who are making a difference in their communities. It is a lively discussion of the opportunities, challenges, and successes of women in their daily lives. Today we are talking about community organizing in the Rogue Valley. And my guest is Michelle Glass with the Rogue Action Center. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Regina.
Yeah, and so I was thinking back on the last time, or the first time we met each other. And so we were here talking about that. And you thought it might have been in 2006 when I was campaign manager for Carol when she was running for District 2.
That's right.
And then the first time I really remember working with you was at the ACRC, and you were signing up some of our guests that came in there that didn't have health care for the Oregon health plan.
That's right, yeah.
So why don't you tell us, that's 2006 to 2020, that's a good span of 14 years. So what were you doing before you got to the Rogue Action Center?
Well, this has been about 12 years of doing community work. Like many women in the Valley, I've gone from being impacted by the issues as a young single mother working in the service industry with no health insurance, getting involved in Planned Parenthood, getting involved in policy work there through the Legislative Action Team, to getting involved with Oregon Action and being mentored by some talented organizers there and getting involved in the fight for the expansion of healthcare with the Affordable Care Act, and actually being sent to Washington, D.C. as a small town rural girl and going to the Capitol and lobbying for the first time.
Oh, you went to Washington.
Yeah. And
so how old were you when you did that?
I was 23.
Okay, exciting.
It was very exciting. My son was very young at the time, and he thought I was going to go visit Obama. So,
okay.
That didn't happen, unfortunately, but that changed my career trajectory. I decided I wanted to spend the rest of my career making those opportunities available for other people in my community who, like me, didn't think that they would ever be able to be part of making those policy decisions that shape our lives. And that sense of empowerment was really something that I decided that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to give that sense of empowerment to others in my community.
Well, one thing that I try to emphasize on Girl Talk is the importance of role models for young women. If you don't see somebody that looks similar to yourself doing something that you think you might want to do, it's hard to envision yourself.
It is.
It's really hard. I just think role models are just crucial, especially for women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's changed a lot since I got involved. Most of the rooms I was in when I got involved in policy work, I was the youngest person and I was one of the only women. And that's changed a lot. Now there are really diverse rooms of people talking about policy, and that's so exciting, and I think such an incredible testament to all the work that's gone on in the Valley.
Yeah, yeah. So, when I think of community organizing, of course I think of Barack Obama. Because when he was running for office initially, that was the thing on his resume that everybody pointed to. Oh, he's a community organizer in Chicago. And thought I knew what it meant, but why don't you tell us what that means?
Sure. I mean, there are many ways that it shows up depending on the community, but it's essentially building community power. So it's different from other models like advocacy, where you have an expert, a policy expert who goes and talks to policymakers about what needs to happen on behalf of people who are impacted by the issue. Community organizing is about building power among those who are impacted by the issue. So for example, with housing, knocking doors, meeting people where they're at, knocking doors of low-income renters, and inviting those families into the policy conversation, finding ways to empower those folks to come and meet with city councilors and state legislators to share their stories and ask for the solutions that they know from their own lived experience are going to work best and be most effective.
Right. Well, as the campaign season ramps up, you see all the high-profile candidates, they always want to throw in a personal story about, well, I met Jane last week, and she told me about this terrible situation. Her husband doesn't have health. So it's that personal story. So you're actually bringing the Janes of the world, empowering the Janes of the world to speak for themselves.
That's right.
To people in power.
That's right.
Yeah, that's very valuable. So how long has the Rogue Action Center been around?
It's 2 years old now.
Okay.
So in late 2017, 15 co-founders came together to form a movement building center.
So who are some of those people?
It was people and organizations.
Uh-huh.
So we had co-founders that were like Hannah Soul and Rogue Climate, working on climate justice in the Valley. We had Lotus Rising Project, Mario Fregoso and Evan Molado, working on LGBTQ equity and youth empowerment in the LGBTQ community. We had the Racial Equity Coalition, Southern Oregon Rising Tide, a lot of people who had been leading work across different sectors. So racial justice, economic justice, climate justice, broader social justice issues like access to health care and equal pay for women, come together and say, we need to invest in movement building infrastructure so that we can develop progressive infrastructure, develop new leaders, and build that progressive community power so that we can have a just, inclusive, and sustainable community for all of us for the long haul. And that's what we did.
So it's kind of a coalition of people that were working on their individual issues, but they needed the same infrastructure.
Yeah, we saw some gaps, and we also wanted to create a space, a movement building center, where people could organize across issues. So
across issues. Okay.
Make those connections. People who were working on fighting for a better wage also wanted to meet and learn from the people who were working on climate justice, and those folks wanted to deepen their racial justice work, right? And so it was about how do we bring these things together.
So is that the same as intersectionality?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the fancy word for it.
I think I know what that means.
Yes.
Intersectionality, as far as feminism and race and all of those are coming together. Yeah. Okay, and I noticed when I went on your website, you've got a campaign now, a pretty active campaign, opposed to the Jackson County jail proposal that's going to be on the May primary ballot for us all to vote on. So I noticed that you were holding workshops on how to write testimony, because the commissioner is going to make I think there's a meeting Wednesday, isn't it? It's on my calendar.
On the 26th. Correct.
This is the final decision that the county commissioners are going to make, whether it goes on the ballot. Is that true?
That's what's expected. They could choose to do anything after hearing public testimony.
They could choose not to
Correct.
Put it on the ballot.
They could choose to listen to the
community. But that's supposedly when the decision's going to be made. So you are actually training people, empowering people then to come to that meeting and to testify. And so you're giving them your workshop, so they're learning how to write testimony and deliver it?
Exactly. So we are working for real solutions to the complex needs our community has. We don't believe that a big tax for a jail-only solution is what's going to be effective for the long term. We don't think we can afford that big jail-only tax. And we know that if we put all of our collective resources into a jail-only solution, that we're not going to get the other mental health and diversion and addictions treatment and housing pieces of that puzzle funded. And so, so by listening to the community, listening to those concerns, and then finding ways to bridge power, we are hoping to shift that conversation and empower the people in the community who want something better. They want a real solution, and they're willing to work for it. But with community organizing as the tool, as you mentioned, the workshop, there's often a gap between people who are having an experience in this community. They have neighbors who are struggling with addiction. They maybe have a child who's struggling with mental health. As a family, they might be housing insecure. And so they have that lived experience and that understanding of the issue from the gut understanding level. But they may have never had the opportunity to attend a county commissioner meeting. And it's very intimidating to walk into that room and to go up and testify in front of these elected leaders who are in their professional suits and have all this power.
And they're above you, too.
And they're above you.
They're on a level above you. That's an interesting
right.
strategy there.
And it's at 9:30 in the morning, so for working people. So community organizing is about how do you reduce all those barriers? How do you help people know that these are even happening? Know that there's an opportunity to have input. How do you help people craft their story and lived experience into testimony that's going to be heard and effective so they have an empowering experience? How do you let them know what all the rules are so they don't walk in and they're blindsided when there's a 2-minute limit?
Right.
So it's, and then, can we provide food? Can we help with childcare? Can we help with transportation? So that community members can participate in the decisions that shape our lives.
So that is part of a campaign that you're putting on against this proposal. What are some other elements that you might be training people on or recruiting people to participate in? I don't, marches are a little bit obsolete, although we have the Women's March, I will remind everybody, is on March 21st. It's going to be in Medford at the Armory there. But marching is not what it used to be, or I don't think it's thought to be as effective as it used to be. So what are some of the other things that go into a campaign?
Well, campaigns are all about strategy, as you know. And so a march is a tactic, and when it makes sense, when it fits kind of the campaign and the goals and where the community is at, and that's going to be an effective tactic, then they're wonderful. But we really try to make sure that we're paying attention to the context. And so we know that turning people out, we had over 36 people come to the last county commissioners meeting and testify. Only one of those people testified in support of the big jail only tax. The rest of the packed room was there to say, we want real solutions. That's much more powerful than people standing outside of that building in that moment. There are other times when that would be, more powerful to have a march or a rally. So it's really about the context. So for us, once a decision is made, if depending on what it is, if the decision that the county commissioners make is to listen to the community and to convene all the partners and really look for real solutions that have all the components that the community is asking for and that we know we need based on data like diversion, mental health, crisis response, pre-jail, and then jail as a component of that comprehensive plan, great. Then we can go into planning and collaboration, and there's so many possibilities. If the county commissioners choose to ignore community input and move forward with a very unpopular, expensive jail-only tax that we know, at the get-go is not going to be effective, then we're going to hit the doors. So then we're training people to go out and go canvassing door to door, and again, so community members understand what's at stake and what we could choose together instead, and that they are prepared to participate in that important local decision, which will be a vote, as you mentioned, on the May ballot in that case.
So that's about March. That's about 2.5 months you'd have to knock on doors. Yeah. Well, having run for office, knocking on doors is valuable. It's if I could have knocked on more doors, I might have won. But yeah, it really is effective. Yeah, especially if it's the candidate, if it's an election for a position. But anyway, okay, so that's one campaign. That's your current campaign. What have been some other campaigns that you've done in the past that have either worked or not worked?
Yeah, thanks for the question. We are not an organization that says we work on X issue. As you mentioned, we try to work at the intersection of multiple issues, and the way we measure our effectiveness is, are we building community power and are we building new leaders? Okay. And so the campaigns are where those new leaders are built, and as you mentioned, the door knocking and bringing community into these decisions is how we're building community power. And so some of the other issues that we've done that with are our housing justice work. So we've spent the last 2 years door knocking across Jackson and Josephine counties, and we've actually knocked more than 2,500 doors of low-income renters to talk about the housing crisis and to listen. How do you, as a community member that I'm talking to on the door, how do you see the issue? What's keeping you and your family up at night? What do you want elected leaders to know? And what solutions do you see? What do we need to be focused on? And then inviting those people in to talk about, this isn't just your personal struggle. This is a systemic issue across your city and across our region. Here's what we know about it. Your story is an important part of that, and here's how we're going to change it. And then working with those people who are coming into that work and filling city council rooms. So we just, actually this month is the 2-year anniversary of our first mobilization of impacted renters and other housing justice supporters. We got 90 people in the room in the Medford City Council chambers. The media was there, and we got a unanimous yes vote from the Medford City Council for a progressive tax on luxury development to fund affordable housing.
Oh, really? Now, we don't have that here in Ashland, do we?
Nope.
We don't have that.
I don't believe so.
No, we don't.
So, so this was a new policy tool that we had worked at the state level to lift a ban on. So you had powerful PACs that had gone to the state legislature.
Real estate industry, very powerful.
And the Home Builders Association together and said, we do not want local communities to have this tool.
Right.
And so it was banned for about a decade. So we worked with a statewide coalition and with impacted renters, lifted the ban at the state level, and then worked on the ground, door knocking and bringing impacted renters into the conversation to then make sure that that important new tool could be implemented in our community. So those are the types of things that we've done. And then after we worked with local city council level policies for about a year, we had a group of tenant leaders who had seen organizing work, had seen results in their community, and who were ready to fight at the state level to pass Oregon's first renter protection bill.
And that passed.
And it passed with strong Southern Oregon voices. And without those Southern Oregon voices, which we took busloads of people every hearing in the House, in the Oregon State Senate, when the floor voted, we were in the room when the governor signed the bill into law. There was a narrative that was being used by the opposition saying, oh, renter protections, that's only Portland wants this. Rural Oregon, there's not a housing crisis there. We don't need it. We can't afford it. We don't want it. Our communities want nothing to do with this. Pass it in Portland and leave the rest of us alone. So wealthy elites, oftentimes landlords or people who worked with property management companies, were speaking for rural communities like ours. And so by taking impacted tenants to speak in their own voice, to testify at every single hearing with Southern Oregon voices, we disrupted that narrative and made the case for statewide protections. And as a result, the almost 50% of our community in Jackson and Josephine County are now no longer 30 days away from losing housing. It's made a huge difference for families and seniors, especially people living on fixed incomes and low-wage workers. And you know, it's a first step. There's more to do, but it was an exciting first step to be part of. And the people who were involved are now continuing to lead in our community.
They're empowered.
That's right.
Absolutely. Now, there was something else I saw on your website. The Southern Oregon Land Use Leadership Initiative. And what is that all about? Yeah,
so Oregon has a very unique land use system, and it's kind of intersectional in its goals. So it preserves farmland, it prevents sprawl, which is both good for low-income renters because that means that your affordable housing isn't just put out on the cheapest land and then you're stranded because there's no public transit and you're not near schools, you're not near a grocery store, you're closer to the core, which we know is a best practice for communities. and it's better for the environment. So it's kind of a triple bottom line type of system that helps guide development in a thoughtful way. So we're building communities in a way that works. And when this system was put into effect, there was an organization, they knew it was going to be under there was a lot of opposition. There were people saying, just let development happen wherever the market decides, right? Wherever we can make the most profit, that's what we should let happen. So an organization was formed when this legislation went into effect, creating Oregon's land use system, and that's called 1,000 Friends of Oregon.
Oh, I know of them, yes.
Yeah, and so they protect that land use system and make sure that the community understands what it is and why it exists, and that the community knows how to participate in decision making within the guidelines of the Oregon's land use system. So the Rogue Action Center, as a community organization, partners with 1,000 Friends of Oregon to make sure that the tenant leaders, people who are considering serving in their communities as elected or appointed officials, and people already in those positions, that those folks can come and do intensive training so that they understand Oregon's land use system and how to best use those tools to get to the community outcomes that we all need. So right now, the application is open and it's on our website, which is rogueactioncenter.org. Anyone can apply.
What are the criteria, qualifications? Can anybody do it?
Anyone can apply. There are only 23 slots.
Okay.
We do prioritize. We want a diverse pool of participants. So in 2018, we did this. We had a diversity of age, 19 to 60 plus. We had people who were elected officials and appointed officials, people who were community members who were running for office for the first time, impacted renters, students, kind of a cross-section of our community who came together and said, we care about housing, we care about transit and our transit system, we care about climate, and we know that if we're going to effectively build the community that we need to understand Oregon's land use system. And so that's what they did. They learned together, they formed relationships with each other, and now those are 23 people who are participating in local land use decisions.
They were trained. You
That's
made
right.
them leaders.
Many of them were leaders to begin with, but we gave them tools. Yeah.
So now this is 2 years later. You're replenishing that commission, or is it a commission? And what is it?
We are getting ready to train and graduate a whole new cohort.
Oh, okay, a cohort. Yes. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have women, men, young people, old people, all of that.
Yep.
Right. Diversity.
That's
Diversity
right.
is so crucial.
It is.
We're trying to do that here at the Rogue Valley Producers. We want more diversity. Mostly we have people from Ashland. We'd like to get people from other parts of the Rogue Valley in here, more women doing shows. So diversity is crucial everywhere you look.
It
It's
is.
very important.
Yeah, we're not going to get the outcomes we need without diverse perspectives on the process.
So who reviews the applications and makes the final decision?
A committee that's made up of the co-sponsors.
Okay.
So 1,000 Friends of Oregon, the Rogue Action Center, Rogue Climate, So Healthy, the Health Equity Coalition of Southern Oregon.
Oh, okay. So it's everybody that's down there that started the Rogue Action Center.
It's a bunch of local community-based organizations that
Okay.
really see the value in developing new leaders to participate in these important decisions. Yeah.
Great. So, how do you get your funding?
Well, we do a lot of grassroots fundraising.
Yes, you have a
and
donate button on
we
your
have,
website.
There's a donate button on our website. The core of our work and really why we founded this organization was to be led by people here in the Rogue Valley, accountable to this community and responsive to the needs. If someone calls us and says, hey, there's an important thing happening in White City today, we are able to mobilize, right? And that responsiveness and accountability to this community, because 35% of our budget is funded from local donors. A lot of people who give on a monthly basis that give us the ability to stay really focused here and not on grant deliverables elsewhere. So we do grant writing, of course, but it's really our base of local donors that provide about a third of our core operational funding that allow us to focus on the needs of this community.
So who are some of your grantors?
We have grantors like the Mackenzie River Gathering Foundation, Our LGBTQ equity work is funded by the Pride Foundation. We are funded by, we had some startup funding from some creative collaboratives like the Resist Foundation, which funds new community startups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Well, I guess I understand what community organizing is all about now. Yeah, I know what Obama was doing back in Chicago.
Yeah.
You use the word mobilize, so you are mobilizing people to take action.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, Michelle, we've come up against the end of our show, and so glad you could come on.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate it. And I'm going to, I'm actually planning on going to it's on my calendar to go to that commissioners meeting next.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We'll see you there.
Just to see what's happening and hear your people testify.
It will also be a lively conversation.
Oh, good. I like that's what Girl Talk's all
That's
about.
right.
Lively conversations. Yeah. Well, I want to thank our volunteer crew, especially Wanda Borland. She is my dedicated director, has been a director for Girl Talk since the beginning, and JC and John and Gary and David. And we're all volunteers down here, and if you want to get your own show going, you just have to take a studio class, which we just started one up this quarter, and you too can have a Girl Talk show if that's what you want. But Girl Talk can be seen on Rogue Valley TV, Channel 15, with Ashland HomeNet, or Channel 182 with Spectrum, at 3 p.m. on Saturdays and 6:30 on Thursdays, or always on demand online at roguevalleytv.sou.edu. And I'll do a little self-promotion here. I have a YouTube channel, YouTube Regina Ayers, and all of the Girl Talk shows can be found on that channel, along with shows from another show called Getaway Girl, which is a travel show that I've done here at Rogue Valley TV. And as I was telling Michelle, I am a songwriter and singer. And I have written some songs and recorded some songs, and they are on the YouTube channel. And actually the theme song for Girl Talk, listen to that as we close. I wrote that and sang it. So we hope you learned something new today, and will join us again soon. So bye from Girl Talk.
Girl Talk, Girl Talk. What's better than Girl Talk?
That was great. Thank you.
Girl Talk. What's better than Girl Talk? A chat with the ladies about their day, the ups and downs along the way. She's a cook, she's a chauffeur, she's a worker bee. First in the door and last to leave. Girl Talk, Girl Talk. What's better than Girl Talk? Girl Talk, Girl Talk. What's better than Girl Talk?